sir. All right. Ride in okay?
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
How long does it take you to get here?
About an hour.
Hour? Okay.
45 minutes.
Takes about 45 minutes to get to Ann Arbor from here.
Yeah. It's about an hour and change, hour and 5 minutes. That's on the morning, no traffic.
Yeah.
Everything good?
Well, still alive, so
That's right.
must be good. Morning.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
That's good.
Good morning. Hi. I was wondering what happened to you.
I'm here.
You okay?
How are you?
I'm good. Yes.
How's Glenn?
Alive. Good.
One day at a time,
Mhm.
is what I would say.
How you doing, sir?
I gotta go get my Bible.
Okay, go get your Bible. I'm new here. You want a cookie, Don? You want a cookie? You want a order? You want to take mine? Huh? What's the matter? Hey, ma'am. Do you need to say that I have the Bible cover because mine is wet? Do I have to ask for Bible cover because mine is wet? No, a Bible cover. But I was trying to find one, I can't find one.
Okay, we'll have to find those to be forgiven.
Yeah, 'cause this one's like, kinda like where it gets wet. I don't like it getting wet.
Oh, okay.
And it was a gift to me and I don't wanna ruin it. I wanna keep it as a gift because I can't see that person anymore. So I moved away.
Yeah.
Don't like coffee?
There's a guy at the nursing home. There's a guy at the nursing home. Probably. His wife's in there doing it all the time. Don't have food, ask her. Say, "Hi, how you doing?" That's good. And at first, I, you know, I thought, what?
Yeah,
You're right at the bingo, you know he's a positive edit, you
yeah,
got.
every day.
His wife's in there, he
If I take it.
had, he lost 70 pounds. He got sick.
Oh, no.
I've only got one, he's about
Because of
this
his
small.
age, he got real bad food.
Right.
His daughter told me there was a period where they didn't think he was gonna
I
make it.
see they moved Dan,
And he was walking with a walker, and I had to look at him, it
but he
was
still works at home, doesn't he?
Yeah.
when he came, I heard him, but he showed up,
His little cubicle where you bump.
and that's what I was like, Richard, man, it's great to see you. How you doing? Best day of my life. And I was like, well, yeah, it is.
Sweet.
It is. Oh, man, I forgot about that.
I got one for you.
Now,
All right.
you save on gas, you save on.
Just not here yet.
All right. Yeah, he's rolling down the hall.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Same at the house.
How you doing, sir?
I like that top there.
Thanks.
Good contrasting color.
They won and they won last time. So we're two up. Yes. Yes. They're looking good.
I just saw him.
He was in the kitchen with
Yeah.
Hey,
I got it.
Sam,
I got it here, you
Sam,
here.
will you happen to know I need like food and water for?
We have food, but we don't have clothes. I will tell them.
I need to know if you can get me something to do.
Sure.
Because I have no food at home.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Uh-huh.
Recommendation is 17, I think. Put it back. I have to go get the Bible. Good.
Just the trick with the map.
Hey, Bob, any words of wisdom today?
Well, I got 3 short ones, stars. What do stars win in a competition?
What do stars win in a competition? I don't know.
Consolation prize.
Okay.
Where do bad rainbows go?
Bad rainbows?
Yeah, bad rainbows.
I don't
They
know.
go to prison, it's a light sentence, but it gives them time to reflect.
That is clever.
And I have one more. I'll pass.
That was good enough.
That's funnier yet, huh?
Thank you.
Oh, I know what it is.
Oh, go ahead.
What's a light year? What is a light year?
A light year.
Yeah, light year.
I want to give a scientific definition, but that's probably not right, but go
A little
ahead.
less calories.
A what?
It's the same as any other year, but a little less calories.
All right, Bob, thank you. We've been educated this morning. Well, we're just about ready to get started here. And Philip, would you mind doing us an opening prayer, please? Thank you.
Let's pray. Father, we're thankful for this day. We thank you for allowing us to be still in the land of the living. We're thankful that you continue to bless us. And we ask that you might be with us as we study your word this morning. We pray that you might bring back to the memory of Jeff the things that he has prepared. And help, dear God, that as he presents it, might present it in such a manner that even babes may be able to understand. We pray that you might be with those who may be on their way coming. We ask that you might hasten their steps, that they'll be able to gather together with us as we continue to worship you in spirit and in truth. Continue to watch over those who are sick. Continue to bless each and every one of us. Forgive us of our sins and trespasses against you. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Philip. All right. Mentioned last week that we had begun in chapter 15, we had begun the fourth vision in the sequence, and we went through chapter 16, and the bowls of God's wrath were poured out, which were very similar to the seals visions in earlier visions in Revelation. And we noticed in the sixth bowl that was poured out on the earth, God's judgment came upon the Euphrates rivers where it was dried up, and three creatures that looked like frogs came forth. And out of these three creatures, one of them was called the dragon, and he spoke boastful words afterwards. And then also out of the mouth of the beast and the mouth of the false prophet. So the three spirits, the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet, were all basically demons performing miraculous visions. And then as a result, it goes on to talk about the battle of Armageddon. And when you look at the world today, is Satan just focusing his evil empire in just one or two locations?
No,
Where's it at?
worldwide.
It's worldwide. Would you expect it to be any different at the end of time? Will it get worse or better?
Worse.
It's going to get worse. It's going to be worse worldwide. And that's why sometimes I get a little puzzled by people who think the Armageddon battle between good and evil is just going to be in one location, where they think it's going to be in Jerusalem or Rome, when in fact it's a worldwide battle. The forces of evil are everywhere, and every facet of the world is being affected by the forces of evil. So the final battle, Armageddon, is when things really get bad, and Satan is persecuting the entire world to try to bring the world down, which is his main goal, is to destroy anything that God loves. So in the seventh part of the vision too, he talks about the great city being destroyed, who is Babylon the Great. And then we began chapter 17, which is vision number 5 of the 7 visions. So 17 begins vision number 5, and that runs through 18, and 19 we get into vision 6. So the one thing we need to understand, though, in chapter 16, Babylon the Great is introduced, and that's what's going to be talked about in chapter 17 and 18, Babylon the Great. And we need to determine who that is. And one thing we learned way back in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, Daniel spoke prophetically that God brings kings up and he brings kings down. And when he has, Nebuchadnezzar has the vision of the statue, it is a vision that depicts future events. What type of future events does it depict? I'll give you a clue, there's 7 of them.
The rise of world powers.
Correct. The rise of world powers, which he just talked about. He brings kings up, he brings down. All these world powers, these 7 great world powers, God is in control when they rise and when they fall. And he's in charge of all that to the end of time. So Daniel and the book of Revelation is really kind of, in a sense, a history book of the world events from the beginning of time to the end of time. So we always think of prophetic visions and Revelation, we always think end times. The book of Revelation isn't just about end times, it's about the history of the whole world. But he's encapsulating it here and moving more focus on the end times as part of the vision as it goes along. So in vision 5, you definitely have to understand a little bit of history of who he's talking about. We have to understand who Babylon the Great is, because he's talking about it in both these chapters here. And to that, you got to understand a little bit of more recent history. And when I'm talking recent, I'm talking in the last 2,000 years. As far as the history of the world, that is considered recent. When you look at historical events over say even the last 1,500 years, as far as Christianity is concerned, where is the focus of Christianity in world history geographically? Where's most of it focused on?
Israel.
That's later. Israel has been destroyed in 70 AD.
You mean like Europe? Are you talking?
Why Europe? Why do you say Europe?
Well, that was the world power. Rome was there. It was a great city. It was a port. Greece is right there. So everything like this industry came through the port and trading. And a lot of people, it was a major hub. It was a world hub.
Okay, and that was what was going on in the time of John when he wrote these visions. Now, he also talks about a future aspect of Rome that's going to be a little bit different than the one John's in right now. And the vision that John's giving, he's talking about with the Roman Empire is the sixth head of the beast. Remember, there was 6 world kingdoms, and Revelation is talking about the first 6 so far. We're going to talk about the 7th head here coming up in this chapter, which, what does Rome, the Roman Empire, turn into to become the 7th head? The 6th head gets dethroned in 476 AD. Rome is conquered, the Roman Empire, and a new empire develops, especially after 300 some AD. And what empire is that comes along as the 7th head then?
Holy Roman Empire.
The Holy Roman Empire. That is the great world power throughout much of what is called the Middle Ages of the earth. And it's focused in Europe, and that is what history books all over the world talk about, is the fact that that Holy Roman Empire dominated much of European history as far as Christianity was concerned. And we're going to look at a little bit of that because the Holy Roman Empire, remember, it is introduced as the beast out of the earth. The beast out of the sea was the beast who was the Roman Empire. The beast out of the earth is the one that had 2 horns like a lamb, which implies that it had a religious aspect to it, which is what the Holy Roman Empire was. So to understand these visions, we have to look a little bit at world history to know what was in the past here and what is going on now. As we saw as time went on, the church after 300 AD, when it was established, where Christianity was no longer outlawed and it became the religion of the state. Constantine, the emperor at that time, declared that. And after that, things changed a lot. And as time went on, you can see throughout history, because remember, it was about 2 years ago, I did a history of the Church of Christ through the Middle Ages and how it always has existed. There's churches all over the world that are ancient churches that they've discovered that say Church of Christ right on the head thing across it, and we know what their doctrines were, and it's very similar to what we were doing. But they were constantly persecuted throughout much of what you'd call the Middle Ages, which is a pretty long time period when you really look at it. So as time went on, with the persecution that went on, because eventually the Holy Roman Empire started persecuting the faithful Christians throughout Europe. And there was a lot of things that were going on that were really bad, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Does anyone here know what the Reformation is? Now, there's technically, in our minds, there might be 2 of them you'll think of. What was the big one? No, it occurred in 1517. What was the Reformation movement?
Was that Martin Luther?
Yes, Martin Luther, and he was a Catholic priest in Germany who decided he had had enough with the doctrines of the Catholic Church. So he wrote up this thing called the 95 Theses, and he took them and started nailing them to doors of Catholic churches all over the empire, which didn't get him a lot of friends in Rome. He was in deep trouble for doing that because he was criticizing their doctrine and saying they were not following the scriptures. And at that time, too, before that, anybody who dared challenge the Catholic Church, what happened to them? It wasn't good. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, too. Huh?
Put to death?
Sometimes, yes. Most of the time. So we'll talk about that, which is ironical when you really think about it. And we'll talk about that, too. So what was Martin Luther's... I have 4 of them. What were some of the big things that Martin Luther identified as problems with the Catholic doctrines? Now, he's not talking about necessarily the Catholic lay people. He's talking about the head, the authority, the leaders of the Catholic Church. What was he saying about them? What were some of the main issues?
The Pope is God on earth.
Okay, they said... that term is sometimes called, he's called the Vicar of Christ, which means he's literally Jesus on earth. What about if he said anything, how much authority did he have when he spoke?
It's like God's word.
It's like God speaking. You can't challenge anything he says. I mean, his word is law. Also, too, he talked about other issues, too. That was a big one. The Pope is not inerrant, and we can even see that kind of recently, too, here, where the Pope said some things that were highly critical of the United States, and a lot of people got upset with what he had to say, and they drew this analogy, said, isn't it interesting, the Catholic Pope complains about the United States killing a terrorist organization that's persecuting the common people and Christians all over the world, which is the Muslim Empire. Their goal is to conquer the world as it is. They're persecuting Christians in Persia, which a lot of people don't talk about that aspect of it. All the deaths in Africa of people being murdered by Muslim groups. There's been over 100,000 people murdered in the last several years in Africa by the Muslims, and they're all Catholics. The only time the Pope complained is when they destroyed a Catholic church. He didn't complain about the other groups. He didn't complain about the Persians because they're not his people. The faithful Christians are not his people. It's only the Catholics that he considered the faithful people. And so a lot of people thought that was very hypocritical, and he was getting into politics. And he made himself look pretty bad by saying that stuff, which once again proves he's not without error. What other issues, what were really important that Luther stated? When you think of Lutheranism, what do you think of doctrines-wise? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I don't know if this is one of them or not. I don't think it has to do with what you're saying, but like, is any part of it the worship of Mary?
That is part of it, certainly. Idol worship, that was a part of it, because that was certainly going on. We just talked about that last week or the week before. All the statues in the Vatican. I mean, any faithful Christian who sees that can't help but think of the Ten Commandments. You shall not have any idols you bow down to. There's thousands of them in the Catholic Church in the Vatican in Rome. Thousands of them. And I showed you the picture of the statue of Peter where his foot was worn off from people bowing down and kissing his feet. Could you imagine? Even Jews would think of such behavior.
It's almost like they've been lulled to sleep because they're the saints, so they're the people who are biblical figures, but yet they're really not educated in biblical principles to the point where they would realize that you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So they're doing it in earnest. They're doing it in a reverent way, not realizing that they're off the mark.
And I would say that's especially true of the lay people, the common people within the church. The hierarchy, they know better. But they're doing it anyhow. We're going to talk about that when we get to chapter 18, because Mark Lieber made a comment similar to that last week, and I want to focus on that because it's a very important issue. Also, what about the doctrine that you're saved by your faith alone? Martin Luther coined that phrase. He also had 5 solas, or 5 solo items that he mentions too in his doctrine, but the doctrine of faith alone was a reaction to the Catholic doctrine of faith by works. In other words, not faith by works, but salvation by works. And the thing he was especially annoyed about is the Catholic practices of indulgences. Does anybody know what indulgences were that the Catholic Church practiced?
I can sin, but I have to pay the church.
Yeah, that's kind of the nutshell what it was.
I think today you can still pay for an annulment.
Yeah, you
just
can.
pay some money and then you're not really divorced.
I know somebody not too long ago did that.
Yeah.
They got a bishop in and they gave him money and they annulled a marriage that was not scriptural. It happens still. So he was inflamed with that act in that they said the church hierarchy can forgive sins. Oh my goodness. That would have never flown in any age in the faithful church where people can forgive sins. Jesus did, and they had a heart attack when he tried to do it. But they forgot who he really was. So that was a huge issue. Also, too, about the scriptures themselves. Catholics have kind of a strange belief when it comes to the scriptures. They do believe that the scriptures are inerrant. But they also think the Pope's word is inerrant. Their councils are inerrant. And you got all these different groups competing about what is true and what's not. But the fact of the matter is, the only thing that's inerrant is the scriptures. And when Catholics in the Middle Ages preached in the church, what language did they speak? Latin. Did they know Latin in France, the common lay people? Germany? England? Nobody knew the language. When they did their sermons, they were in Latin, and nobody knew what in the world they were talking about. Were they even allowed to own a Bible? Nope. And if you translated the Bible into the common language of the people, you know what they did to you? Yeah, it was a death penalty. And they did do it. They killed people for translating the Bible. And Martin Luther really did a number on them concerning that issue. What about the priesthood? He had something to say about the priesthood, the Catholic priests. They were the dominant force within the Catholic Church. What did Luther have to say that the Bible says about the priesthood of Christians in the New Testament?
They're not allowed to marry.
I was gonna make a comment. I did hear on the radio, the first, I believe it was 1,200 years in the Catholic Church, the priests were married. And then one pope
Yeah.
changed it.
Yeah, that probably sounds right.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But.
There's a lot of things if you look it
yeah.
up.
Right.
Surprising. So,
Jeff,
yeah,
there's also like a real undercurrent of darkness in the Catholic Church. So him being a priest, he might have seen a little bit more of that. I mean, we saw it in the 90s or the early 2000s, everything that came out about abuse and things like that. And my sister-in-law's dad went through the, what's it called, to become a priest. And, you know, he made a couple comments over the decades that was pretty dark. It was
Yeah.
it was like this undercurrent of some, like, there's just a sexual side of it that's a deep, dark undercurrent.
it's funny you say that because the thing that prompted Luther to do the 95 Thesis was right after he made a long visit to Rome, because he's from Germany, and when he got there and spent some time there, he was appalled at the gross immorality in the priesthood, gross diversion from scriptures. He was just incensed because he knew the Bible. He spoke Latin, so he knew the Bible. And he was just, that's what caused him to actually write that. And you could even see this in a smaller sense, even in our own country. You got certain people in our own government, our own House of Representatives and Senate. There's somebody in particular there's several people in particular that are calling out the gross immorality in our own government here in the United States. The things that goes on in Congress are just as appalling as some of the things that went on in the Catholic Church too. There's just extreme gross immorality even in our own government today. And they're just starting to find, you can see it in the news, it's starting to come out in a big way. So you can see that these are not all the issues, but they're big issues. Martin Luther, especially with the faith-only doctrine, was a overreaction to underreaction. In other words, salvation by works is not the whole truth, and salvation by faith alone is not the whole truth. And James chapter 2 talks about the fact that they're both working together. Now, I think the Catholic Church kind of changed their doctrine here in recent times, and they've kind of corrected that a little bit, but still, there's still that element in it that's a contradiction where they still do that. So Martin Luther wasn't correct in saying faith alone, but he overreacted to the fact that they were talking about works alone, where salvation was a falsehood too. So this is just a very brief overview of that. I even saw this article. And tell me if you see, from your reading of the New Testament, see if this sounds like something that the New Testament would agree to as far as the organization of God's church here on earth. This is called what the definition of the Holy See is, which refers to Catholicism. The Holy See is the central government, supreme jurisdiction, and apostolic episcopal of the Pope, overseeing the entire Roman Catholic Church. It represents the authority, sovereignty, and judicial personality of the papacy as an entity under international law, distinct from yet headquarters within the Vatican City. The seat or cathedral of the Bishop of Rome symbolizes the authority of St. Peter. The central government, it encompasses the Pope and Central Curia, the advisors and department that govern the church worldwide. The Holy See is a spiritual, administrative government, while the Vatican City is a physical territory created in 1929 to support its independence. It holds sovereignty in international law, sending and receiving ambassadors and entering into treaties with nations. Does that sound like anything that sounds familiar that the Bible talks about in the New Testament? Sounds to me like a government, doesn't it? And that's exactly what they are in a very real sense. It's the combination of government and the church. Does anybody know what the First Amendment of the United States Constitution is?
Free speech, right?
That's part of it. Freedom of speech, there's like 5 things. Freedom of religion,
It's freedom of religion, not from religion.
you're right. Freedom of religion. So what's interesting about that is it's talking about the separation of church and state, because many of the people that came to the United States to found this country came from Europe, and all the insanity that was going on with Europe in the persecution of Christians. It's a well-known fact that many people came to the United States because of religious persecution in Europe. And they deliberately set up a government that was supposed to be, government's one thing, religion's another thing. The two should not meet, which is what the Catholic Church has been for ages. It's a combination of 2 entities, the harlot church and government itself. And that's gone on for a long time, and the people who came here wanted no more of that because they saw what it led to in Europe, and it was a very bad thing in the long run. Also in chapter 17, we're going to notice too that there's a great contrast that appears in chapter 17, and it continues throughout the entire rest of the book of Revelation. The 2 contrasts are, there's 2 women in the book of Revelation. Chapter 12 talked about 1 woman. Who was the woman in the beginning of chapter 12 that the scriptures talk about?
The mother of the baby.
The mother of the baby, and who is she symbolic of?
Church.
The church, or the faithful of all ages. That woman is the woman that brings forth God's people. Now the second woman's going to appear in chapter 17, and this woman is called the harlot, or the prostitute. And so these 2 are in opposites of each other. One is called the bride of Christ, which is the woman in chapter 12, which is the woman that gives forth the church. And the other one is called a harlot or a prostitute, which doesn't sound like a very complimentary term at all. So beginning in chapter 17 now, we'll notice these things as we go through. Hopefully got enough background here to help make sense of this, because the Bible most certainly it has its own dictionary. I mean, if you look enough in the scriptures, you'll find definition of certain words in other places if you're puzzled by them in one spot. Verse 1 begins, "One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, 'Come, I will show the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on the many waters.'" So one of the 7 angels who had the bowls, and they were curses on the earth, and he's going to tell them about the punishment of who? What's he going to tell them about here? This is another aspect of Vision 5, is he introduces a judgment on a specific item. The item of judgment here is whom?
The great prostitute.
The great prostitute. When you think of the word prostitute, other than the sexual connotations, what do you think of her as her job in the world? Other than the sexual part, we know what that is.
Defile things,
Defile things,
confusion, all
create confusion,
Separation, strife,
yep,
all
In-
those negative things,
tempting,
yes.
Make
Uh,
people not believe,
hmm?
make people not believe.
Make people not believe. There's a lot of aspects to her personality that shows you what her goal is to do, is actually to destroy.
Deceiver.
Pardon me?
She would also be a deceiver.
A deceiver, yes. You can see that in Proverbs, where it talks about the wanton woman, how she deceives and destroys. Notice it says,
Didn't she try to deceive God?
pardon me?
Didn't she try to deceive God?
Yeah, Satan does that,
Yeah.
tries. Now, also too, it says she sits on many waters. Now, that one might be a little hard to interpret unless you know the rest of the scripture, because there's one of those words that you need the rest of the Bible to tell you what the many waters is.
I'll guess. Nations.
Yes, it's nations, it's the people of the world. So this great prostitute sits upon the world, trying to deceive the world and tempt the world into sin. So that is who he's speaking of. Notice he also says in verse 2, and her, the kings of the earth, committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. Now, remember, symbolic language here. The kings of the earth committed adultery with the prostitute. Does that mean the kings of all the different nations came and did adultery with this woman? What are they talking about?
No, I
Those
don't
who
mean
used to
that.
believe,
Huh?
those who used to believe.
Those who used to believe. All right, so in the Old Testament, often when the scriptures were talking about Israel, when it was falling away, it used a term very often to describe Israel's actions as actions of adultery to God. Now, what does that mean?
When you don't listen to God,
When you don't listen to, it's as simple as that. When you don't listen to God. It's when the faithful have corrupted themselves and gone over to adultery, which is spiritual adultery. He's not talking about physical adultery. He's talking about the kings of the earth in union with this woman commits spiritual adultery, which is not a good thing. So the corruption of the kings is spiritual corruption. Notice it says, and they were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. What does that image put in your mind? These kings of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. What does that mean?
I'm thinking of, the kings have power, so they're seduced, to be corrupted because they're in a position where they can sort of get away with more.
Yeah.
or corrupt people.
Yeah, and corrupt people. And also the Catholic Church had charge of armies for hundreds and hundreds of years and controlled the armies of Europe. Whatever they told them to do, those kings would do it. If they said, go destroy these people, they would go and destroy those people. And they certainly did do that. So when you think of intoxicated, as far as the kings are concerned, with her, what image does that put in your mind if they're intoxicated?
They can't see anything else.
Yeah.
And another comment, I think it's interesting that when you read the Old Testament about the temple prostitutes and the king's concubines, hundreds and hundreds of them, you know, there does seem to be a literal sense to this somewhat.
Mhm.
You know, just because we don't necessarily have that today, we're not hearing of King Charles and his 400 concubines, you know, and temple prostitutes, at least not, it's not something, I'm not saying it doesn't exist somewhere, but not something we're really hearing about.
Right.
Yeah, and I know this is symbolic, but, I mean, it does mirror some things we can read about in the Old Testament.
Yeah, and it actually happened in the Catholic Church too, the same thing. There was gross immorality in the Middle Ages within the Catholic Church itself. There's historical accounts that speak of those things, and it's quite shocking to read about it. Verse 3 now. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit to a desert, There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, where did you hear that term just a chapter or so ago about the desert? What did we note about this place, the desert? What was the symbolic aspect of the desert? What happened there in that place?
Where you go to when you're running away or escaping from something?
Yes. And when the Israelites escaped from Egypt, where did they go? Into the wilderness or the desert. Where does the church go in chapter 12 of Revelation? Into the desert. The same place that ancient Israel went to escape from whom? There's 2 different escapes here. One's from Egypt and one's from... The Egyptians was the first one. And in the New Testament, who is the church escaping from? The Roman Empire, who was being controlled by Satan. So Satan's pursuing of the woman, and she was taken into the desert. And this is something I did not figure out. I think I understand it now. Back in the earlier chapter, the 2 beasts that were mentioned, one was the sea beast, and one was a beast out of the earth. And it said the earth helped the woman. The earth beast was the Catholic Church, or corrupt Christianity. So did the Catholic Church help Christians in a certain respect in the wilderness from the 5th or the 6th head, which was Rome itself? Who was persecuting the Christians at first, after Christ died? The Romans, which was the 6th head. So they were persecuting the church. The church went into the wilderness to be protected by one thing. It was by the earth. Who was the earth in the other vision? The sea beast, and there was the earth beast. What did the earth beast symbolize? The Catholic Church. Corrupt religion. So it was corrupt Christianity, and when in 476 AD, the Roman Empire was defeated, and then you had the Catholic Church come in and stop the persecution of Christians, with Constantine declaring that the church was a legal religion at that time. So at first the Catholic Church was helping the faithful in the wilderness, which is a place of protection from the beast itself or Satan itself. But that changed as time went on. So as we see that, also too, when you look a little further on, notice it says, there he saw the woman was sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. Who is the beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns?
Satan?
It's Satan. That is the 7 great world empires, which we've mentioned in the past, who these empires, it's really clear in Scripture, historically, who these empires were. It's all been very accurately laid out in Scriptures, and we've seen how they affected God's people through the ages. So this woman is sitting on the scarlet beast. What does that tell you about her relationship to Satan?
Does she like Satan?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can see that they have a relationship. Verse 4, the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She had a golden cup in her hand and was filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. So this woman was dressed in purple and scarlet. Now, remember we mentioned earlier on that Jesus was dressed in what?
Scarlet?
No, not Jesus. Jesus was dressed in something different.
White and gold.
Yeah, white and gold. And it was brilliant white. It was almost a blinding light. So this woman is dressed in purple and scarlet. When you think of, in those times, in ancient times, wow, that went fast. When you think in ancient times, who typically dressed in purple and scarlet?
The wealthy.
The wealthy and emperors or rulers. It was a sign of royalty. So this woman has the sign of royalty, and how much, can you tell anything about her wealth from these verses? Extremely wealthy. So she was royalty, and she had extreme wealth. So as we go through here, we're going to see some things that are, it'll tell us historically, it's give us clues to who this woman is that's riding the scarlet beast. And I don't want you to think I'm just coming up with this. I think there's some clues here that tell us. And then in verse 5 it says, this was written on her forehead. Mystery Babylon, the great mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. And notice it says, this is written on her forehead, her name, Mystery Babylon, or Mystery Babylon the Great was written on her forehead. And it was actually typical in those times that when prostitutes went about, they would have their name on their forehead. So you'd remember who they were. And that was kind of a weird thing. So notice too, she's a prostitute and she has her name on her forehead. And it identifies and tells us who this woman was. She's Babylon, Mystery Babylon the Great. Let's find out who this Mystery Babylon the Great is. Okay, clue number 1 might be this next verse, verse 6. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. So this is a New Testament. Who was this woman drunk with the blood of? Those who did what? Follow Christ. Who's the main entity throughout the Middle Ages that murdered and killed faithful Christians? Holy Roman Empire. It is real clear through history that they were certainly responsible for it. That's a clue. So, and also too, what's interesting about this is, remember just before, when Jesus came too, the Jews were the protector of God's Old Testament law. And up to that time, when the Messiah finally came, which their scriptures talk about it, when he came, what did they do? They killed him.
They hurt Jesus.
They killed him. So what's interesting is the Catholic Church is going to do the same thing that the Jews did to the faithful in the New Testament, that when Jesus taught the truth, they killed people. They killed all the apostles except for John. They just killed people left and right. So this woman persecutes Christians to the point of killing them. And then he says, and when he saw her, I was greatly astonished. And that's understandable. When the Jews killed Jesus, isn't it a point of astonishment that they would have actually killed their own Messiah? That the Bible talked about he was coming and he was going to do all these things, and he fulfilled 300 some prophecies in their sight, rose people from the dead, healed the sick, and they killed him. I mean, that is enough to bring about astonishment and unbelief. Like, how could they do that? Same thing is true with the scarlet beast. She's going to do the same thing the Jews did. Persecute the truly faithful for her own sake and her own power, because it was all about power for the Jews too. It was the same thing, money and power. So John was astonished when he saw this vision, and he was seeing the implications of it. And the angel said to him, he said, "Why are you so astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and the beast she rides, which has 7 heads, 10 horns," identifying again who she is. "The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and will come up by the abyss and go to his destruction, and inhabitants of the earth, whose names have been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because he once was, and now is not, and yet will come." And that's what he talked about in previous chapters. The 5th head, or the 6th head, eventually falls away, and then the 7th head comes on the scene and kind of rejuvenates the 6th head, which was Rome. Instead, now it's called the Holy Roman Empire instead of just the Roman Empire, which is the 7th head. So he's identifying, this is the second clue that identifies who this Babylon, the mystery person, is. So we're out of time here, and we'll pick up in verse 9 when we get together next week, and we'll talk about from this point on, after verse 9, we get into some very future events from even now. And it's very hard to predict who they are because it gets into what is called the eighth head. And the only place that Scripture seems to spend too much time, other than in this chapter, talking about that, is what it talks about the great false prophet, is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which we read last week. So those two chapters here and there kind of go together. Any questions or thoughts as you read? All right.
Be interesting, because I had a note of the Bible right when I was studying down, studying from the sermon, and it says it was predicting the fall of Rome and everything you're talking about, and it says it says about, it's not for us. No, you're more. This, the book of Revelation does not predict our day.